In this video, we'll show you how to work with context and global variables in scenarios. Let's start with global variables. Open the app and go to the Global Constants structure, which is also known as global variables, and create a new object with an ID, we call a key, and a value. Let's just say, Hello World. Save your object and switch to the Scenarios tab. The new global constant is now available in all scenarios. Add the Edit Object step to the scenario and select the test field from the Books structure. To change the value in the test field to the global constant value, you need to select the Global var structure and the constant ID, also known as the key. That will edit the test field in the Books structure, so it has the same value as the global variable. As usual, for debugging and testing, copy the object ID and run it from the Scenario Debug menu. You see in the logs that everything worked as it should. The field now has the global variable value. Note that there are no global variables among the fields available for writing, because they are de facto constants. Typically, they store standard parameters for the environment, such as URLs, passwords, or tokens. Now, let's move on to context variables. Go to the Start step and add the system name, field name, and type of context variable. First, let's see how to work with string variables. You can add a default value for string variables. As an example, ABC. Let's use a context variable instead of global. Select Context Variables and then the variable we're working with. And add a couple of exclamation marks. You see from the logs that it all worked as it should. The field now contains the variable value, including our two new exclamation marks. You can also use the check expression function to verify the result without modifying the object. You can set the context variable value using the check expression menu to see how the expression would be handled if it was needed. Note that context variables can be changed within this scenario, but the value of the context variable is always unique to a specific scenario object pair. Essentially, they are local variables within a single scenario that work with a particular object. You can see their values in the logs. In the Start step, the value was ABC, and in the Edit Object step, it changed to 12345. Let's add another link type context variable. It will allow you to use the context variable to work with other structures. We'll make it a link to the authors structure. Remember that link type fields simply store object IDs. Copy any ID from the authors structure and store it in a context link type variable. Note that you don't have to select myvar.id. You must add the object ID directly into the context variable. The second step is to use the link. Let's write the first and last name of the author we linked our object to, using the context variable in the test field. Run the scenario through the debug menu, copy the object, and paste it back into the debug menu. Look at the field in the logs. The context variable has been filled in with the ID, and the test field now contains the first and last name of the author we linked the object to through the context variable. If you check the expression using the check expression function, you'll get an empty field because, in this case, the context variable was filled in the previous step. To test that, you can copy the object ID by hand and paste it into the check expression field. Now, everything is working as it should. So let's see how context variables work within the link scenario step. Remove the first step and leave only the first and last names to be stored in the context variable. This scenario will not fill the context variable, but will take it from another scenario using the link scenario step. Select the current object, send it to the scenario, and set up the mapping for context variables. Here, you need to send the second context variable. Send a constant, that's just the object ID from the author's structure. You can of course use the object fields from the first scenario. All that's left is to publish and run the scenario. We see that the test object has an empty field, which we will fill in with the first and last name. Now submit the object. You see in the logs that everything worked as expected. Now check the object, and yes, the test field has been filled in correctly. And the logs show that the respective context variable was handled. The last important detail to note is that context variables are limited by size. You can store links, small texts, and so on, but you don't want to store, let's say, 5,000 lines of JSON there. But you can store something like that in the object field, because it has no restrictions. That's it for now. See you next time.